Welcome to Meet the Black Press, a podcast dedicated to telling the untold stories of the black community in the United States and the black diaspora around the world. Meet the Black Press is presented by the National Newspaper Publishers Association Podcast Network. Welcome back. We are here live in Norfolk, Virginia at the Hilton Main Line in Norfolk, Virginia for the NNPA convention, annual convention. And we are here speaking with the publisher. Are you the founder?
I am the publisher of the Dallas Weekly in Dallas, Texas.
Introduce yourself, sir.
My name is Jim Washington. I have an affiliation with the Atlanta Voice newspaper in Atlanta, Georgia. And it's fraught with legacy. It's fraught with branding.
We want to get into all of that. We want to hear.
And I'm just happy
story.
to be here.
Man, thank you so much, Mr. Washington.
My pleasure,
man. We really appreciate you. So let's get it going right here quickly, man. So we've already introduced you, Mr. Washington from the Dallas. Tell us
Dallas Weekly.
Dallas Weekly. How long has the Dallas Weekly been around?
Oh, Dallas Weekly been around 62 years.
Nice.
Atlanta Voice 53, I believe.
Excellent.
And we are, by NNPA standards, that's the National Newspaper Publishers Association, we are probably babes in the woods. Yeah. There are a number of publications that are older than ours, and probably 7 or 8 that are over 100 years old.
Yeah.
And if you can just think of the businesses in our communities that are 100 years old, then there's something to be said for longevity and how our communities have sustained us.
And in the game of media, longevity is extremely important. You guys have been spreading the message throughout Dallas and Atlanta for the past 5 or 6 decades. So how did this come to be? Can you tell us a little bit about the history of the founding of the paper?
The newspaper in Dallas was founded by Anthony T. Davis.
Okay.
And he was Philadelphia born and raised and moved to Dallas.
Okay.
And started the newspaper there. He wasn't the first, but he's been there. That paper was there, and I acquired that paper from him. I'm humbled to say it was a deathbed wish. His widow, Lucy Mae McDonald Davis, told me this, and she made sure that the transition was completed, even though Mr. Davis expired while this whole process was going on. The Atlanta Voice is a second generation paper. It was founded by J. Lowell Ware as part of the civil rights movement, because those leaders in Atlanta felt like the story wasn't being told the way it should be. So J. Lowell Ware started the Atlanta Voice. It wasn't his first newspaper, but he was one of the few African Americans who actually owned the printing press. So he actually had newspapers in as far away as Macon, Georgia, Augusta, Georgia, Pensacola, Florida, etc. Each one called The Voice.
Wow.
And I think that tagline was, and still is, a people without a voice cannot be heard.
Excellent.
In Dallas, we're just the #1 newspaper serving the African American community.
I love it. These sound like two visionary men for like the community. They sound like guys who really did something significant for their community.
When you think about, and I tell the following story. I simply say that black newspapers were birthed out of a segregated world.
Very true.
Right? So we existed as the societies were in fact separate. So we were the ones that championed the cause of the lynchings in the South, the integration of the armed forces, et cetera, et cetera. There's no struggle that we weren't a part of. Very
important stories also that weren't being told by mainstream media.
Absolutely, absolutely. And still
exactly.
not being told by mainstream, if you will. And my analogy is simple. It simply says when Jackie Robinson crossed the color line in baseball, wonderful, wonderful issue. Wonderful, wonderful thing that happened, right? But it killed black ownership of baseball teams. And I am one of those people that believe Branch Rickey did not do this out of the goodness of his heart.
Certainly didn't do us in the favor.
I think he went to Comiskey Park on the south side of Chicago and saw 50,000 people watching a black baseball game and said, there's some money to be made.
Talk about it.
I believe that was an impetus. If they don't say it, I believe it certainly was there as a consideration.
Exactly. It wasn't an entirely altruistic act.
Now here come black newspapers.
All right.
Similar situation. And I liken it to the riots in the 60s. Cities were burning us. White media did not have black reporters to go into these communities and cover what was going on. So they went to black newspapers and they cherry-picked reporters. They could pay them more, the careers were there, etc. So as a result of that, we just didn't go out of business. By hook or by crook, by genius and other tools, if you will, we stayed in business. And you could not find the legends in white media who didn't have their beginnings in the black press.
That's a big fact.
But it is a truth. Now, I'm old school, guy, so, please understand I'm old school that says that, that was the beginning of what the white man's ISIS culture. All right. Now it just is, which simply says, okay, now all of a sudden there was a time when you had people who would graduate and say, well, I need to go to NYU. I need to work for the LA Times. It wasn't that I need to graduate from Southern University or Florida and go to work for the Philadelphia Tribune, which had in its heyday and still does over 100 employees. Salary is pretty good,
Right.
I mean, the reality of starting a career was one where we just weren't looked upon as that place to go. You really achieved something if you could get that job working at the LA Times.
Exactly. And you know what I look at as a person who's younger and who's seen like the way that all played out. That attitude of not caring for our own and not being intensely attached to building our own communities and our own businesses what laid the groundwork for what's gentrification now. And they're taking everything that we thought we had, like we thought we had the city, we thought this was our hood. No, it's not.
It is amazing how value can be changed by who owns it.
Thank you.
So when you talk
we owned it, it wasn't worth nothing.
I mean, there's a something to be said for the historical references that people make in the sense of, well, at one point in time, the United States of America had the #1 public education system in the world. That was when white folks were
the majority of public schools.
Now all of a sudden, immigrants and black folks and other people, that's where we went to school. Next thing you know, you had white flight. White flight went to the suburbs and the public school systems went down. Well, did they go down because what?
Because what?
Right, I mean, exactly. Was it a political issue? Was it because you didn't have the right teachers? Did you have, there was, you expect excellence and you get excellence from kids.
Yes.
You expect them to do poorly and
they will, right.
You mentioned gentrification. Well, isn't it interesting that at once upon a time, Harlem, when it was segregated, place to be, place to go, businesses everywhere.
Hey, talk about
all of a sudden, here comes integration, and Harlem starts to go down.
It turns into a slum.
Now, next thing you know, man, how much is a brownstone?
Too much for me.
how much is a gray stone in Chicago?
Hey, I'm from Washington D.C. We living through it.
So all of a sudden, when it becomes an issue of, well, now white flight is now a white in-flight into the inner city, so now the property values go up, the resources get available, developers start to come in, etc. And somehow you want to blame the folks who were there in the beginning as the reason that it went down in the first place.
I think about that, and I think about the fact that they took that and made that the narrative, and also think about the black press. How important do you feel like it is for members of the black press, and just the black press in general, to take back control of the narrative and take back control of, telling our own story?
I am proud to say that is an as we speak effort.
Right.
And it is an as we speak effort because there is a value shift in the sense of, quote, why black press got started in the first place. When we tell our story, it's a different story.
Every time.
Right? The Atlanta Voice, 2 weeks ago, on the front page of their paper in South Fulton, a newly formed city in Fulton County called South Fulton, I think it's South Fulton County. And the headline was, "When Black Women Lead." On the cover, in this new city, everybody who's involved in the justice system is a black female.
I like it.
The police chief,
Atlanta just got a black female mayor.
Georgia just nominated a black female as a Democrat for governor.
Okay.
So she still got,
we still got to win the general.
Still got to win the general.
Make sure you go out and vote.
But the fact is, she's there.
Yes.
My understanding is Ben Jealous is now the
Ben
Democratic
Jealous
for
voted out
Maryland.
yesterday. Yes.
All right. So when you look at how we cover our stories, what stories we actually cover. The reason I bring up the issue of the black women who lead is because every white newspaper picked up the story, but it wasn't important until we put it out. Now it's a story that they want to commandeer and take the narrative. Well, you can't take the narrative because the sisters now are saying that's okay. We got to run our city, but whenever we need to talk, they'll talk.
We'll talk through us. So
we'll talk.
And you're a savvy man. I see you understand that. So that leads me to my next question.
Yes, sir.
How did you become involved in media personally?
Oh, this is.
I know this is a good story.
Okay,
I'm ready.
Okay. I'm from the south side of Chicago.
All right.
I went to an integrated grade school, integrated high school. I found myself at Southern University in Baton Rouge.
Hey, I'm a Jaguar too.
Absolutely.
My man.
And wound up going to the University of Wisconsin for graduate studies.
Okay.
In journalism. So just draw a line down the middle of the country.
Right. You were straight up in Mississippi. You were just riding on the riverboat.
Right? and since I'm from Chicago, University of Wisconsin, Madison, 66 miles away.
Really?
I get in there and they tell me, oh, you poor little fellow. You come up here and you're going to struggle with the standards of academia.
Like you weren't advanced in something. Like Southern University isn't a rigorous school.
Thank you. So therefore, I was basically told by an advisor I was not going to be able to go into what I wanted to go into, which was investigative journalism. Now, I didn't have the right foundation in the courses that I took. I got attitude and said, excuse me, I need to go someplace where I can make some money. Which one is the one that's going to make the most money?
Talking my language.
And they said advertising.
All right.
So I went into advertising.
Okay.
I was in advertising, taking the basic courses, if you remember, this is graduate school, and a West Virginian named Scott Cutlip, who wrote the manual for public relations, effective public relations. We studied his book, snatched me. And I got an afro, may not think so. I had an afro, had a peacoat. And he said, you in the wrong field. And I went, what are you talking about? He said, you need to be in public relations. I got insulted because he said, your people are going to need you.
Yes, sir.
And I went, what are you talking about? He said, well, I want you to watch this class. This class was of a political campaign where I don't know if it was a Republican or a Democrat. They knew this guy was going to lose, but they wanted him to get name ID. And so they showed him being shaped by handlers. Couldn't wear certain clothes. His family, they had to come up with the right image of the sweater and the conservative nature
all
of it.
Like really contrived.
And then what they said was, here are the issues that were facing that district. Let's say it was water.
Okay.
He's on a panel and they showed, well, here comes the question. But they told him that the real issue is water, but people think it's education. And he gave an education answer, and there it was. So this was manipulation at a level that I had not seen.
Yeah.
And
it's a real thing.
Now, this is leading to the power of the press. But at the time, it was the power of controlling and manipulating information that people received in order for them to do something.
Around what time would you say this is?
We're talking 71, man. I'm an old codger.
I like it, man.
71, 72, 73.
But that just shows that this game has been being played for a long time.
But fortunately, this is a white gentleman. This is the son of coal miners.
Good.
Who's telling me
that
in order to make this thing work, information was going to be the commodity of the future. Now, I learned this when I was 22.
I say this all the time.
All right? So if information is a commodity, then you have to understand, are you spending it? Or are you investing in it? Are you a consumer? Or are you manufacturing?
Exactly, a producer.
So I wound up learning this, starting an agency, moved to Dallas, Texas, first African American public relations agency, etc. Was told to make the longer story short, and was told that, wait a minute, you know what? This town did not have what the majority community said was an adequate vehicle for news. They had newspaper, but these guys said no. Just so happens, as Lord and fate would have it, we met a broker, and the broker said one of the newspapers was for sale, and it happened to be the Dallas Weekly. The owner, Anthony Davis,
Yes,
took a
sir.
liking to me, told his wife
That's what I was going to
on
say.
his deathbed, baby, if you can't find the money, give it to him anyway.
I like it. I
And
want that gentleman.
wait a minute, and I wound up being taught and groomed in that. So
That's great.
I went from the PR agency to buying the newspaper, but understanding in
Both
a different
sides of
level the power of the press.
Absolutely. Man, that's
And therein
impressive.
lies how I got into the business. So I kind of washed my hands on the PR side
Okay.
and wound up, and we bought the newspaper in 1985, and in 1989, me and my partner, he took the public relations agency, and I took on the newspaper. And I'm proud to say that right now, my son, he wouldn't believe I'd be saying it. The heir apparent. I call him Michael Corleone.
All right, that's right.
I'm Don.
You gotta have a Michael.
And wait a minute. As everybody, if you understand the dynamic of The Godfather, which is the best business manual you could possibly see,
I love this guy right here.
then what happens is The Godfather, Don Corleone never made it to Vegas.
Nah, sure didn't.
So I'm not going to be the guy that rides into the
I hear
future.
that.
So as I'm sitting here on a podcast that's being generated by a black newspaper, then the brand gets expanded.
Yes, sir.
The brand cannot be touched by anybody.
Brand is strong.
The brand is strong. The relationship that the Washington Informer and what you're doing with the bridge,
Washington Informer Bridge.
all right,
Yes, sir.
can't be negated by somebody else because the relationship is solid.
Very true.
If the relationship is solid, all you're doing is diversifying the techniques
Yes.
and the tools used in order to communicate information that is important to our community. Make no mistake about it, I'm an advocacy journalist.
I love it, man.
I'm advocating. I make no mistake about it.
You're the king of segues right now, man. Because that's leading me right into what I want to ask you. Because what we're doing right now with the podcast and with just expanding into digital media in general, like, what do you see as the future of your publication specifically, but the black press, in general? Where are we going with this, man?
Now you saw, you saw,
That's
and,
right.
and you heard me say, my prism is public relations.
Right.
So if my prism
man
is
to talk
public
to.
relations, then my view may be a little bit different. Some people might think it's skewed. And I simply say that the future is bright because I'm in the communications business. My brand is the Dallas Weekly, now DW, or the Atlanta Voice, or the Washington Informer, or what have you. My job is to diversify that brand's methodology of distributing the information. So who cares if it's a printed publication, a digital publication,
It's all
a
information.
podcast, a tweet,
Yes,
or what
sir.
have you. It's the brand that is the thing. So the future is bright for those who realize that.
Yes, sir.
The thing is, I am who I say I am to new consumers of what I produce.
Big facts.
I'm a multimedia company.
I'm whatever I told you I was.
I'm a content deliverer.
Exactly.
Right? My problem is educating old school agencies that I am more than a print publication because print revenue is going down.
It's just a fact.
These are the facts.
It's
now,
just
I'm
a
going to
fact.
print a newspaper as long as I can drink a cup of coffee and I can read it.
And that's why we appreciate our publishers, because to be honest, we couldn't do any of this without the support of the Washington Informer, which has been around about the same amount of time as the Dallas Weekly.
You
and
have
stuff
to
like
give the leadership credit. Now,
Yes.
there are those who are your age and the age of the folks who are involved in this who say it's not fast enough.
Yeah.
I would simply say to you
That's
that
a trait of a young man.
That's-
You know?
Wait, I was that guy.
I feel you. I know you feel
All right.
me.
So I'm pleased, but I also, as I said, I have a son who's saying it's not fast enough. It's not fast enough because the industry is changing so much. The example I would give to the viewers, the listeners, and to you is a PR guy told me this. He said the guy who made the last buggy whip made the best buggy whip that was ever made. You know buggy whip?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah, but then the car came.
He should have gone into the upholstery business. No I will not be the guy who makes the last
good newspaper.
Good newspaper.
Yeah.
That's the best newspaper that you ever saw.
Yeah.
I'm going into communications.
I hear you.
I'm going into the multimedia world.
I love it.
So now you have to look at the skill set of young people.
Yes, sir.
As opposed to, and I'm running into it now, I'm running into people who are journalists.
Hey.
They are print journalists. Mm-hmm. Man, you say, okay, well, what about the website? Man, and they still have difficulty
like,
dealing
what's
with
that?
Wait a minute. One of the most powerful journalists in the world today is a photojournalist. One of the most powerful journalists today is a videographer.
Very true.
Is an audio. We had a guy come into the Atlanta Voice the other day who talked about audio marketing, audio branding of our publication.
Shout out to podcast.
And it took me to a whole different level of having the uniqueness of style, your style, our brand, as it relates to people who heard us. And I just was moved to simply say, okay, what do I need to play?
Yes, sir.
I'm one of those people, man, I don't have to play. Wait a minute, this is one of those things where, hey, you were in another life, I'm a spiritual guy.
Yeah.
I write a spiritual column across the country, picked up by a whole lot of newspapers. So my scenario is I'm always biblical in this. I mean, I'm always spiritual in this. And that simply says, man, God puts people in your way while you're on your way, who are destined not to get to where you're going. But you couldn't get there if he didn't put that person in your path.
I know exactly.
That person might have made you turn left. That person might have made you stop. That person might have made you go right. But if you didn't go right, you couldn't get there.
Very true.
So the end game is the same. As an advocate in a shrinking world. Remember this guy's name was Scott Cutlip. He told me the world was getting smaller in 1971.
Smart man.
What did he mean when he said the world was getting smaller? He said, man, you can be in Africa tomorrow. I can be in Africa in about 5 minutes by getting on my phone.
Oh, no doubt.
All right. I get tweets from Kenya now. All right, Facebook. So the world is getting smaller because you can be any place at any time to see what's going on, which means the connectivity of the planet is the next great thing. And it's like, it's not just a cell phone. Tomorrow it's gonna be your eyeglasses. It's gonna be your watch.
I tell my son, man, I'm like, look, man, it's incredible that I can FaceTime you right now, but by the time you my age, you're gonna be hitting me on a hologram or something. Like, hey, Pops, I'm in the living room. What you doing?
I guess you call him. This is a gentleman who's your age. He is my nephew by marriage. He has at the time he had a 2-year-old little girl. Came in, we having this conversation. He took his phone out and put it on the floor. Within a few minutes, she had gotten to the place where she was playing with the game or whatever she wanted. She did not read a manual.
Didn't touch a manual.
But she just, that's that world.
It's intuitive in a way. And it's so funny because a lot of the technology and a lot of things that we do right now are based on a feel. You know what I mean? Like, we're not trying to create so much of a product, like a physical, tangible product. We're trying to transfer a feeling. We're trying to make people understand like what our generation represents. And an organization like the NNPA, full of newspapers, publications of all sorts that actually embodied and encompassed the feeling of, like you said, starting really civil rights movement and black advancement and prosperity and chronicling desegregation of all types of things. Like right now, we have a whole different world to chronicle and to explore. And what do you feel like an organization like the NNPA, what do you feel like we all as members of the Black press, as a team together, should do to push that agenda forward?
Your generation has to respect mine.
Yes.
For what we know and the experience that we have.
Had this conversation.
But the responsibility is I have to respect yours. I have to respect what you bring to the party. I have to respect your insight. So I can't get upset. Excuse me. I'm sure that as crazy as this sounds, I'm sure a whole bunch of people got upset with the NAACP. back in the day. I'm sure.
For sure. There was rabble rousers.
The same way people got upset with Black Lives Matter.
Exactly.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Because each element of who we are, not now as a nation, and this I'm gonna try to get this point out before we close.
Okay.
That is, there is a reality that we have to accept. And that is, I'm never going to, I don't care how much DNA you take from me, etc. I'm never going to identify as a Nigerian.
Right.
I'm never going to identify as a Kenyan. I can respect the heritage, but as a culture, I am African American.
Yes, sir.
There's an experience that we have in this country.
That's unique.
That is unique to us.
Yes, sir.
And we have to respect that and force others to do so. Now, if that's the case, then come back to what you're talking about, which simply says, where do we go from here? Man, this is about as simple as we can get. Let this lock with that.
Yes, sir.
It's not just the imagination, it's the intellect.
Yes, sir.
It's the intellect that's going to give us the genius that allows us to do what we need to do in the world, because the last thing that we're looking at is, how do you keep your foot on my throat? You continue to try to tell me what I'm not. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it proudly. You heard me a minute ago when we started. Say I went to an integrated grade school back in the day.
Okay.
All right. Now, I then went to some other institutions.
My man.
That I met people who didn't do that.
Right.
So there was a thought process that I dug up that simply said people actually thought the white man's ice was colder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they wanted a white doctor instead of a black doctor. Wait a minute. I was in graduate school with black guys who were becoming doctors. If they got out of school with a degree, they were 10 times better.
I'm talking about that.
So in that particular instance, I'm looking at the situation and kind of go, wait a minute now. Hold it. If that's the reality that we have to deal with, then I have to think myself and realize that the genius is walking around me. I'm still here.
It's here. Yeah.
I understand something real clearly, man. That is, as an older black man, I understand the righteous indignation of being who I am and where I am. I made it this far.
Thank you.
Wait a minute, I didn't do it by myself.
No, sir.
Hey, man, a little of this was hustle.
Yep.
A little of this was let me go right instead of left. Let me realize the danger over there, but let me also find the friends over here that can do these kinds of things that we're talking about. And now, take a look at any black newspaper and look at the archive. You're going to find out what happened in places with people, etc. One of the biggest compliments I ever got. I was able to go to the Baltimore and Washington, D.C. Afro. I think it was 120-year anniversary. And the keynote speaker was I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember the young lady's name who wrote the book Hidden Figures. She found the names of the ladies in the archives of the black press.
Of course, because that's the only people that would
Because she
give
couldn't
them props.
find
Right.
it
They sure weren't
anyplace
writing
else.
about them in the Washington Post.
So these are the kind of things that I would simply say to you and simply say to us. Whatever our disagreements, where we are, it can't be generational.
Hey,
I can't now. I was where you were to simply say I'm thinking that my seniors didn't know what the hell they were talking about.
I'm sitting there looking at you. I'm like, man, this guy is style goals for when I hit these ages right here, man. I'm trying to move like you.
You can't give up on me.
Right.
And when I say me,
there you go.
My son gave up on me a long time ago. Because
we always come back around, though.
But I'm trying to make sure that he I'm trying to protect.
Yes.
I mean, I'm trying to get him from here to there, and he's trying to say, let me go, let me run. You ever see a 2-year-old say, let me hand go, let me hand go,
I was that guy. I'm still that guy.
Now all of a sudden he's like, okay, if I get in front of him, I can keep him from falling on his face. But you know what? He gonna fall.
He gonna fall.
And he needs to, because that's the way he learns.
No doubt, man. Mr. Washington, I really appreciate every bit of your time, man. Don't worry about that.
All right.
There we go. We got some stabilized.
Yes, you do.
There we go. We're okay.
We are.
But yo, before we get out of here, we just got to make sure we can tell people how to get in touch with you if you want to be reached. You know?
Oh, I'm excuse me, Jim. James Washington, Jaws at Dallas Weekly. JAWS like the movie. Those are my initials.
I like that.
To be funny, Jaws at Dallas Weekly, or Jaws at The Atlanta Voice. That's THE. Jaws at theatlantavoice.com. You can get me there at any time, any place. And I will answer the question. If you mention the bridge, I'll put you to the front of the line.
Oh, all right. Listen, you heard it here first.